And sales had one KPI, which is revenue dollars. And so these guys said, how are we going to get containers on the boats? Well, they had some methods. And then the next group is called operations and uptake. And they're the people who put the containers on the boats. And wait a minute, in that industry, 30% of the cargo never shows up. And therefore, all ships are overbooked by 30%. But of course, you can't make that work exactly. So that the key thing here is what cargo to put on the ship when you've got too much cargo. And the answer is the cargo with the highest yield, because every container has a negotiated different rate. So their KPI is to put the most valuable cargo on boat, and then that means they actually have to take it the next port. They'll take containers off. You know, they started in Europe, they'll take them off in the Middle East, they'll go to China to wait for a boat that has lower yield, and so therefore they put it on that. And then finally they had a department called customer service. And customer service, after your cargo's been rolled, makes it right with you by offering a rebate. Okay, and their single measure was customer satisfaction. And it turns out customers are satisfied if you give them a lot of money. So here, the guys up here are trying to maximize sales. And by the way, they have an SAP system to run the schedule. And these guys had found a way to independently book cargo off SAP for 40% of total cargo, because they couldn't book it and make the sales at the rate they wanted to by going through the system. So these guys had invented an alternative system. Okay, well, now wait, this is the fun part. So we went across the world and we drew a map of what's really happening. And we put it up on the wall at headquarters. And we got these three function guys standing there looking at it along with the COO. And it's just horrible. I mean, you just can't imagine how idiotic this is. But basically, these guys are at war with these guys, or at war with these guys. And snarky, horrible culture, everybody playing games. And the door flies open. And it's a guy who says, we've lost control of the ships and the schedule. We won't be booking any more cargo from Europe soon. Just wanted you to know. So the whole system crashed. $60 billion business. So you've got these four characters, the COO and these three characters, standing there looking at the wall of this horrible process. And so what I said is, now can we agree, a little different from the way you do it at the BI, now can we agree that your baby is ugly? And they said, yeah, our baby's pretty ugly. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? Well, this is to be continued. That's a true story. And can you imagine what? So it was a totally financially driven KPI company, a total process oblivious with regard to how the thing actually works. 40% of the cargo being done off SAP as a workaround so they could get their target numbers up. This is crazy, and yet it's happening all over the world. So therefore, there is always a conflict between the vertical and horizontal. It's the way life is. On this planet, it's the way life is. So how can we get horizontal visibility with someone taking responsibility so that we can then say, well, how should each vertical change in order to do the right thing for the customer and the company? And by the way, if you're a senior manager, there's nothing to be scared about here, because you don't have to actually know anything. Nobody's asking you to draw the map. Somebody goes out and then you just ask questions about, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Is this for the good of the company? Is this for the good of the company? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? But the problem right now is that most senior managers just look at the KPIs. And did you make your numbers? Okay? And the answer is there are a lot of ways to make numbers, most of them bad. There are a few ways to make numbers, but unfortunately they have to involve collaboration if they're going to be good. So that's just thought about that. I see, boys, I'm getting a little creaky and croaky. I could, knock off all the rest of it, but maybe
but let's go. Yeah. I think that it's very important to think about why people resist lean. I think let's talk specifically about the lean issues, which are very important, and especially for our club members. Just at the beginning, all of us, actually, in a way, in the beginning of this journey. And how we can face resistance internally and externally within the organization and make it kind of common language and teach people not to do things, how to think about it.
Well, okay, the resistance. Make yourself the employee. Why would you resist? And the reason you would resist is that what is happening is going to threaten your job. What is happening is going to threaten your power. And by the way, in a lot of organizations, it's the workarounds and the fiddles are what people depend on to keep their job. That if you do it with SOP, standard operating procedures, it doesn't work at all. The employees down here know that, the bosses don't. And so therefore, if you want to start digging down to how is the work actually done, well, this seems very threatening. Okay? And then a lot of people just don't like to be checked up on because what they've heard about being checked up on is that the boss is doing it to get you. And it's everything from your compensation will be adversely affected, or we all know this is about headcount reduction anyway. So we're going to figure out who to fire. So it's not surprising that employees are resistant. So there is a question of how does the organization treat people? Okay, and I can't answer that for you. Paul had a story I was hoping you were going to tell about when you got to need to do some lean stuff in a situation of big financial loss.
Sure.
And in fact, you want to just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, the other thing, I think people are put off by the Japanese terminology. Why are you using Japanese? What? Speak English, speak Hebrew, whatever. You know? And well, they're different in Japan. You know? How often have you heard that? It won't work here. That only works in Japan because they're compliant, quiet people. They do whatever they're told. Doesn't apply to Israel, that's for sure. But so actually, when we started our program, our approach to this, we didn't even call it lean. We said we want to improve the work environment. Let's do a little contest as to what we're going to call it in the hospital. And we actually did a contest. People could submit names, and we ended up calling it Spirit, which was it was an acronym for something. And we actually got entries from throughout the hospital for names, and then we did a survey monkey on email. Vote for the name of your choice, and Spirit won, and that's it. And then it was only 3 years later that we actually told people it was lean, once they were so I think the story that Jim wants to tell me, it wants to tell you is we had a bit of a crisis situation. And to your point also, a lot of people view lean as the excuse for laying off people. We're going to get more efficient, we're going to save money. The whole purpose is to save money, and once we save money, we can get rid of those people because we're redundant. Well, that's death. I mean, that's really not good. And you can say all you want. Oh, don't worry, we're not going to do that. Your jobs will be more interesting, and we'll be able to handle more customers and so on. But people don't believe it. So we had a situation in early 2009 when the economy was going south, where our projection for the year was to make a profit of $20 million, but by halfway through the year, it looked like it was going to be negative 20 million instead of positive 20 million for a lot of reasons. So my CFO and COO came to me and said, we have this problem, we're halfway through the fiscal year almost, we're going to have a $20 million loss, that's a $40 million run rate for the remaining 6 months. The only way to solve this problem is to lay off 400 people. At the time we had roughly a little over 6,000 FTEs, so it's a big cut, right? And I said, well, I'd rather not do that. Why don't we ask people who work here for ideas? And my CEO and CFO said, no, you don't understand the importance of the problem. We have a 40 million run rate at this point, and we have to have things in place by April 1st. This is on March 1st. Because every week that we wait, it makes it worse. And I said, well, you know, I still think it's worthwhile asking people what they should do. Maybe they'll have some good ideas. And and I promise we'll have it in place by April 1st, whatever it is. So they left, and I could see them talking to each other after they left my office, like, here he goes again, he's crazy. And we called some town meetings, we called people together, and I asked my CFO to start each meeting with a short explanation of the actual finances of the hospital, like a 3-minute presentation, so that everybody would understand what the numbers look like. And then I said to the staff, you know, I don't want to lay off anybody. There's currently an 8% unemployment rate in Massachusetts. It's really hard to find a new job if you're laid off. And with an 8% unemployment rate, if I lay one of you off, there's a 1 in 12 chance that your spouse is already out of work. And I don't want to create families where both people are out of work. So what would you think of us all taking a bit of a sacrifice, coming up with ideas so that we could avoid this, so we don't have to lay people off? And, you know, I actually have a picture of it I can show you later. You would look, this photograph of the town meeting is everybody smiling and laughing while this conversation is going on. People are good-humored, making jokes about it, this and this. By the way, I started the thing off by saying that the senior management had agreed to take a salary cut. For the vice presidents, it was 5%. For me, it was 10%. Plus, give up any bonuses we were entitled. So I laid out the process to them. I said, you know, over the next week or two, what I want to do is start collecting your ideas. We'll use email. We'll have electronic chat room. We'll have whatever. You know, we'll use our social media to do this. And then after the first round, I'll send out another email to all of you saying, here are the ideas that people have submitted, and here's my preliminary assessment of them as to whether they're workable or not, whether we can actually implement them. And then I'm going to ask you your opinion again based on the narrow range of options. And then I'll tell you a week later what I've decided, and explain why I've decided what I've decided. So they're sitting in the room saying, oh, this sounds good, this sounds good. And then before the meeting ended, I said, but I'd like to run another idea by you and see what you think. There's some people in this hospital, the transporters, the food service workers, the custodians, the housekeepers, who already don't earn very much money. They're the lowest paid workers here. And they're good people, and life is already hard enough for them at their salary range. What would you think of the idea of exempting them from any of the sacrifices we all agreed to take for ourselves? And knowing that if we do that, we all have to take a little bit more of a sacrifice to make up the difference for those people. They burst into applause. The audience burst into applause. Why? Well, this gets back to the purpose again. The nurses and the doctors and the other people in this assembly understood that the housekeepers, the transporters, and the food service workers, besides being good and wonderful people, actually have more contact with our patients than anybody else in the hospital. The transporter spends the entire day pushing beds. Custodians are going into rooms all the time cleaning. Food service people are delivering meals all the time. They spend their entire day with patients. Nurses, by the way, only spend 20% of their time with patients. The rest of the time they're fetching things and looking for things. So they felt, the other staff members felt a great appreciation for the role of these folks and agreed that they would do this. And it was a great moment. So we went through it in just the way I outlined, we proceeded. Now the other interesting thing about this is this chat room we established, this electronic chat room, was anonymous. Anybody could say anything they wanted for other people to comment on. And there were some negative people in the hospital who were saying nasty things on the chat room. And at one point, some people came to me and said, you have to shut down the chat room, because there are nasty things being said on there, and it's not appropriate. And I said, well, but then the fascists win. I mean, you don't shut off discussion in a democracy because there are some mean people. I said, instead of that, whenever you see a mean-spirited message on the chat room, why don't you respond with a comment saying, this isn't appropriate. So that's what started to happen after a couple of days. The negative comments all disappeared because the people who were submitting them were being told, hey, we don't want to hear from this, and they let it go. So we did it, and we avoided the layoffs, but then this gets to reinforcement for the next time, if there is a next time. Then I said to the staff, after a few months, things started getting better again. And I sent out another email to the staff saying, you've given up these 3 or 4 major things. As we improve as a company, I'd like to return them to you, but I'd like your advice on the order in which you get them back. So we just did another little survey monkey, saying, which would you like back first, your vacation time, your salary, or whatever. And as things improved, sure enough, I would put out a memo saying, good news, our financial results are better, you wanted this thing first, it's back starting Monday. 2 months later, the next thing. So, and then when we got to the end of all that, we'd done even better than we thought. And as a surprise to everybody, I gave everybody in the hospital a $500 bonus at the end, saying to them, I know this will not make up what you've given up, but it's an expression of our appreciation for your having participated in this process. So what we're doing 2 things here. One is the substantive thing of asking people for their suggestions, their ideas, and implementing, and being respectful. And that's good. But what made it really work, if you think about it in kind of personal terms or whatever terms, we were reflecting back on the people in the organization their own underlying set of values about the community in which they worked. They worked in a caring community, caring with regard to patients, but it also overflowed into caring about one another. And I got a lot of good credit for having done this, but in a way I didn't do anything at all, except to reflect back on them, their own value system. And I guess the final comment I would leave with, it's been my experience running now a number of organizations, that in every organization, for-profit, non-profit, academic, non-academic, there is that purpose, and there's an underlying set of values or ethics that you can use, and I don't mean manipulate, but use in a positive way to reinforce the work that's being done and improving that.
I would like to add, first of all, for your question, but there is another issue that I would like to have you both reply on. First, few important club members, CEOs and other leaders who wanted very much to come over could not make it because they are in a very urgent crisis now. They put them under and exactly as you've been in court. They said, look, we need to solve this problem next month. We are in such as we say now, we all understand that happiness is a positive cash flow, as we all understand. Now this is the basic. And they look at lean, and this is for both of you, as a long-term process, so we don't have time to deal with long-term processes, changing cultures, and dealing with processes because we have an immediate problem. And we get all the benefits of being a firefighter, and this is the time to be manager, to make decisions. So they are now, rather than to come over to discuss all those issues, they are trying to make decisions. And I had a difficulty to come up and talk with them. Look, this is a small team, and I'm not sure that a replace of being and think about it will not save you the time. I had time to convince them. In fact, they are not here, and they are making decisions. So have the immediate meeting, we can measure and evaluate the lean journey success? Because this is exactly the question. We are talking about lifetime journey.
Yes.
And how we can measure ourselves facing immediate crisis, immediate problems, immediate need for change.
Well, look, there are immediate problems, which are often thought to call for heroic leadership. We're all in favor of leadership, right? Leadership's a good thing. My experience in life is the reason you need heroic leadership